Hi friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Danny and today I'm going to be showing you my budgeting setup for 2026. There will be 3 different sections to it. I'm going to start with going through the binder that I show on my videos, and then I'll be going through and showing you what I do on my computer in Notion and Excel. So let's start with the binder. This binder I purchased from the Daily Grind Planner Company. The sizing is a bit odd. It's a 7x10, so it's fairly difficult to find inserts for the binder other than what they have on their website. So I did end up just creating my own inserts for budgeting and printed them off on 7x10 paper I got from Amazon and then put them in the binder. But this is the binder. And then on the inside, first we have a pouch that I found on Amazon to hold my checkbook and stamps so I can keep it with the rest of my information. And then the divider tabs are also from the Daily Grind Planner Company. So just going through the different sections, we have the registers, where I haven't been using this, but I'm going to start for 2026, where you can put the name of the account, the starting balance, and then as you do transactions or money you get paid, money goes in and out, you can put in the lines and keep an accurate recording of how much money you have in that specific account. I do also have some for credit cards, and these are double-sided. So the register has the backside can also be used. It just doesn't have the account name and starting balance at the top. So we have the credit card register, where it has the card name, the creditor, interest rate, due date, and monthly payment. I was using this when I actually had credit card debt and I didn't pay it off every month like I'm doing now. So I don't know that I'll be using this one, but I had some left over from when I did have the debt. But you could go in and you could put in just the same as the other ones, where the date, the description, and then if you make a payment on it, and then the purchases, the interest that you accrue during the month or are charged during the month, I guess, and then the running balance. And then after that, I have expense trackers, and these are my different category trackers for my budgeting. So I have them broken out. I have the type of category at the top where it's fixed or variable. So it's just what I've shown on the videos. You can go in and you can put my date and my description, if it's money that I'm budgeting or spending, and then the running balance for that category, and then where it's located. So I have multiple different accounts, and I have my high yield savings. I have my regular savings that's attached to my checkings. My high yield savings is a completely different bank. So I'm able to go in and say the rent I keep in my savings until I go to spend it, and then I would move it back to my checking and spend it from there. And then I have variable expenses. Those are also located in my savings, where those I'll just pay directly from the savings to my credit card, because I normally use my credit card to make purchases for this stuff. And then same as the other one though, date, description, money in, money out, balance. Then, nope, that's another variable. And then I have my sinking funds. Those are kept in my high yield savings, but it's the same format, date, description, money in, money out, where it's kept, and then the funded name. It just says sinking fund at the top. And then, oh, that's sinking fund. Savings. I also have savings that is also at the high yield savings account. And these are things like my emergency fund. And then I have one for my dream home. It has a very minimal balance. I think it's $50 at this point, but it's something, it's not a sinking fund. It's something that I'm actually saving for. So the emergency fund would be something I'm saving. And then I have some extras in the back here that aren't being utilized at this point. After that, I have my debt trackers. So I did show this in my debt overview, but it just has a place where I can list all of my debts, the interest rate, the balance at the time that I filled this out, and then the monthly payment. And then once they're paid off, I can come back in, which I can go through. You'll get a little bit of an update here. I can mark off that I paid off my cell phone installment plan. So that's been done. And then behind that, I'm not going to show the actual ones, but I have a debt tracker where I have the name of the debt, the creditor, the interest rate for that debt, the due date that the payment is required to be made on, and then the monthly payment amount. And then in here, I would start off with just actual balance, and then I can go through and list the date, the description, the payment amount for the principal, or whatever, however you want to do that. I normally just do the principal amount here, and then the interest amount for that time frame, and then the balance would be the previous entry's balance minus the payment. But you could also do it if you just want to put in the full payment amount here. I guess you could go in and just do the balance minus the payment plus the interest. But those are the debt trackers. I do have them for each of the different student loans and then the installment plan, but I don't want to show them yet. I want to show them when I go through and do a debt update. So you get to see a blank one. And then after that, I have my monthly budgets, which I will flip to January. And in here, bugging me. In here, I have a place where I can put in important dates and highlight them if I like. So dates like holidays, paydays, birthdays, anniversaries, whatever dates I might want to keep in mind for that month. And then I can also do a monthly finance challenge. I would write down the description, and then as I complete the challenge on each of the different days, I can mark it off or highlight it or however I choose to keep track of it. I can also go through and do a highlight or high point for that month, and then what I need to work on. Do I need to spend less time on Amazon because it's getting me in trouble? Possibly, but I can write down that, and then I can go back and look on previous months. Did I get better at this? Do I still need to work on it? That kind of thing. After that, so I'll go back and show this in December. I also was somewhat using a monthly spread. I'm not using that in 2026. I wasn't really using it in 2025. So I got rid of it. I still have it, so I could use it in the future if I want, but I'm not going to be using it for 2026. But that is something that I did put together, so I could use that if I wanted to. But we do go now straight into the monthly budget. Let's get this over a little. There we go. Where I'll go through and I'll budget out my income, how much I'm budgeting for it. I'm not sure how I'm going to utilize the actual, if I want to do the amounts I actually spent or received that month, or if it's the actual amounts that I ended up budgeting, because sometimes it does change. And then I can do a difference column with a positive or negative. It would just be the budget minus the actual. And then, or if you're doing the actual amount you budgeted, it would be the actual minus the budget, I believe. But I can go through, I have my income categories. I can put in all my income for the month that I'm expecting. And then I can go through and put in all my fixed expenses with their due date in the month, and then how much I'm budgeting for those. And then I can tally that up and see what's left over. And then I have my variable expenses with their budget amounts, and then I have sinking funds, and then debt and savings. And then I think once I'm done with debt, I'm going to remove that section and just have it be savings. Or maybe something else. I don't know. And then after the monthly budget, we get into my paycheck date budget. So each time I get paid, I go through and I budget out that paycheck itself into all the different areas that I want for the next 2 weeks or to pay for that month. So I have my income for that paycheck, fixed expenses, variable, sinking funds, debt, and then savings. So I have 2 of those for each month, except for the months where I have an extra paycheck. Then I do actually have 3 of these. And then after that, I have my expense trackers where I can put in the date, the description of the expense or the name of the place where I went or purchased from, what category it would fall under, and then the amount, and then my payment method. So I would put in, for my credit card, I normally just put CC for credit card or cash or checking, and then I will know, I can add all those up so all the checking ones I can add up, and then I can add those to my registers, and then I can add up all the categories, and then add the category amounts to my category expense trackers. So I have a couple pages of that. It's about a sheet for 2 weeks for me. So I have 2 or 3 pages of that, and then it goes right into the next month. Having the binder, actually, while I do use my other systems a bit more, having the binder and writing everything down does help a lot, because I'm more aware of what I'm spending and where, how much I'm getting and what categories I might need to work on. It's not just in a system. So, but yes, this is my budget binder. And next I will be showing you Notion. Okay, so I apologize in advance for any clicking you hear. It's my mouse, but I will try and keep it to a minimum. And any outside noise, I apologize as well. I'm using a different, normally I record just on my phone, but now I'm using a mic that's connected to my computer. So this is my Notion setup, and I'm actually in the wrong screen. This is the first screen. So in my Notion setup, I have different areas where I can do different things. This is just the main screen that I see when I open it up. And just a note, the dollar amounts that are listed on the accounts and in the budget balances, most of them are incorrect. I made a copy of my actual system and deleted everything except for this month. So the information is going to be off, just dollar amount wise, but this is the actual system that I use. So I have a place for my bank accounts. I can see not only the posted balance, so what has actually been posted against the account, what my balance is at that point, but also if there's anything that hasn't posted yet, such as a rent check or a purchase I made that hasn't finalized, I can see what my actual balance is that I have available. So it's the posted balance minus anything that hasn't been posted. And I can see that for all of my different accounts. I have them broken up by bank accounts. I have my credit cards, my loans, any investments. I have a 401k through my company, and then other Amazon gift cards, anything like that. And then I also have a place where I can keep track of how much cash I have on hand, which I do have some. This isn't correct. So I have that information, and then I'm also able to see how much I have available in each of the different budget categories. So I have my fixed expenses, my variable expenses, my sinking funds, my savings, and then no budget items. So interest and fees, I don't actually keep as a budget category because it's when I budget for student loans, I do the full amount to student loans, and then any interest and fees, it just increases or decreases the balance. And then I can see the transactions for that week. So I had student loans come out, and I have it broken out into expenses and then income and transfers. So when I make a student loan payment, I do a transfer from my checking to the student loan account for the full amount that was paid against that loan. And then the expense, the interest and fee is expensed against that loan account. So I do the expense category, or I budget for how do I explain this? The transfer is what reduces the student loans budget. It's not the interest and fees. And then, so I have the weekly, and then I can also see on a calendar view all of the transactions. So I have 4 different views. I can see everything. So income, expenses, transfers, all of it together, or I can break it out by just income, just expenses, just transfers. But on a daily basis, I generally just look at this top section here, and then I will go to new entry, which is where I will actually enter new transactions. So I do have, I'm not going to show this because it still has the original names of companies and stuff like that, but I do have templates set up for my transactions where it will automatically, on certain times of the month, create a transaction for my cell phone payment, for one. And it'll pop in, it'll have the name of the company, and then the expense amount. Normally I'll have to update that because it's not always 100% correct, but it'll fill in the date that it is created, the name of the account, or the name of the company, and then the expense category populates, the expense month populates, or no, expense month doesn't populate. I have to enter that in. But the source account populates. If I have a saved memo, that'll populate, and then it'll also add in the bill that it is paying against. We'll get into that when I get into my bills and subscriptions area. But it will auto-populate at the time of the month that it's supposed to populate. And so it does for all my expenses. It does the same thing for my paycheck. It'll automatically add the paycheck information in there. And then it will automatically do certain transfers. I also have a place where I have different presets saved where I can just click, if I'm having money coming from my high yield savings to my checking, I can just click this and it'll auto-populate everything except the dollar amount. And then I have the same thing for, well, not really. For income, it's just other, because I have my salary auto-populates. But I do have the same thing for expense entries. So new credit card, new checking, new other credit card, cash, Amazon, all of that stuff. I can just do it and it'll auto-populate the source account and the date, and I think I fill in the rest of it. And then down here, I can add new accounts if I want to, or I can see the actual balance, what type of account it is, all of that information. And then I can do new income categories. And then I can do new expense categories if I want to. And then in here, it also actually tells me the subcategories. So under personal, I have it broken out into books and electronics and hobbies, journaling, that kind of thing. For eat out, I have restaurants, fast food, coffee, all of that. So I can see what the subcategories are for those specific categories. And then I can also view my accounts just here. It's just the same in its own screen. And then I'll come back to this one. I also have a place for all my databases. And I do have a quick entry on most of this where I can just do a quick entry for different things. Actually, for this one, it's new, different types of accounts. So you could add new accounts here as well. And then I can go in and look at all my transactions again, everything all in the same place. And then I can also just look at just the income as its own little section. And then expenses have their own section. And transfers have their own section. In here, I can do budget entries. So when most of my budget entries are on my paychecks themselves. If I was monthly budgeting, I would probably come in here and create my entries because it wouldn't be based on a specific paycheck. But I do it based off of my income transactions. So I'll show you that in a second. But I can come in here and do budget entries, and these feed into how much I have available in my budget categories. I can take a look at my budget tracker. So again, it's just a breakout of all the different budget categories and their balances. I can see this month how much I've budgeted, how much I've spent, and then if I'm under budget, I'm exactly on budget, I'm over budget, and I have a progress bar here. And it's broken out by type of category. And then I don't really use this section, but I can also come down here and see if I want to see if there's trends. I can look at cell phone. This is how much I've budgeted every month for this year. And then I can also come down a little bit farther and I could look at how much I've spent each month that year for a specific category. So actually, maybe I should do that on some of the categories. Just take a look at that. And then I can go in and set up some goals. So I have my occasions. My goal amount is $1,200 and my current amount. And then the amount to the goal is $1,000. And then my emergency fund has been achieved. So once they're achieved, you'll get that. I'll get that little red check. If it's in progress, then it just shows in progress. And then I can put in a date that I want it to be achieved as well. I don't have goals for everything, just some of the stuff that I do. I think I've changed some of these amounts and I need to update them as well though. And then I have my bills and subscriptions. Anything that's overdue or upcoming will show up top here. And it'll also show up here if it's past due. I guess I did miss this part. I also have a notification center here where I can see what my net worth is, the income for that week, expenses for the week, the weekly total, the transfers, and then I have a monthly summary and a yearly summary as well. But back to, so I have a couple different ways I can look at this. I can look at it on my calendar and see all the different things. A lot of them are, if they have a blue text, that means that they're an auto deduct and they will automatically have their payment will automatically be generated in the system and the amount is auto deducted out of the credit card or checking account or however they're auto paid. If it's red, it means that I need to manually enter the payment or manually make the payment. So rent I pay by check, so I would need to manually make that payment and then record it in the system. But it tells me how many days until it's due. And then once it's passed, so once we hit the 22nd, these two will move to the 21st of January. And then I also have a list view where I can look at them all, see when the amount due, the monthly amount. I guess I don't need both of these, but the monthly amount, the next due date, the category for the bill, any notes, if it's active or not, and then if it's auto pay. And then monthly subscriptions, I also have those. And then anything that's annual, the monthly amount, so the amount that I put in here is the actual payment amount. I put in that it's due yearly on the due date, and then it'll tell me the monthly amount that I need to save to make that payment. And then anything that's inactive will show up here, which Angie Bellamar is the person who created the Daily Grind Planner. So I found out about them from watching her YouTube channel. But yeah, I used to subscribe to her on Instagram a couple years ago, actually. And then I also have overviews where I can see the income and expenses for the year and then the gain loss. And I have it summarized by year. And my monthly summaries and all months aren't working at the moment. I need to go in and make some changes to how they filter so that those show up. But it's basically the same thing, just broken out by month. And then I don't really look at this, but I can see all my income by category. And then again, income by category, just in a slightly different view. It breaks it out by month instead of just the lump sum. And then I can also look at the expense by category. And I need to do something other than this month. There we go. So I did $7.99 in subscription so far. And then I need to scoot over to December. And then I can see the expenses for the month so far. So just the same thing as on the budget entries, or sorry, the budget tracker, just in its own page. So once I come in and enter my income, oh, wrong one, do this one. I come into this specific income transaction, and I have different buttons that I can do variable budget and fixed budget. So for this one, it's normally the variable and fixed budgets. I click those, and they do all the different lines for the different budget items, and then I just delete the ones I don't need. I'll fill in the dollar amounts for that paycheck that I am budgeting, and then I'll change the date and I'll add the month. And then that will update my budget categories with the budgeted amount. So it'll increase the budget. I don't zero out my budget at the end of every month. I roll any remaining balances forward into the next month. So it will show that. So it'll just increase whatever the balance is. And then once I've gone through and entered all of my expenses and income and all of that stuff, I go to my export to workbook. And in here, you can't export from this screen here if you want to download it, but if I was just typing it into the workbook, this would be fine. But I normally will enter transactions in Notion during the week, and then once a week or at this point it's once a week, I'll go in and I will download the copies. So I'll actually go to the transaction entries database for exported, and then I will export it from here, and I'll just use this view is set up exactly how I need it, and I'll use this to download it. But let me go back. So I have my expenses that I can export, any transfers that haven't been entered yet I can export, and then any income that hasn't been done yet I can export. And then once I export them, I click this button and it removes it from the list, so I know that I don't need to do it anymore. And that's one thing I didn't actually. So down here you have your posted balance. The posted balance is updated based on this checkbox. So if this is checked, it will include the amounts in the posted balance. So this is also where I go through and do a small little bank reconciliation. And if it's been posted to the account, so this one has been posted to the account, I would click it. And my credit card posted balance would update. So it's currently at $1,033.55. I would go in and this one's posted $71.28. And it's updated to include that amount. So this is my bank rec, essentially. But yeah, that's it for Notion. Once I export everything, I will go through and go to the workbook now and show you where it all gets entered and how that works. Okay, so this is my Excel workbook that I use for budgeting. And once I export the expenses from Notion, I add them to this page here. I put in the date and the month will auto populate. I put in the account number. I have a place here for the check number. I normally have that in the notes or the memo in Notion, but here I have a field for it, and then I have the description, which is where I put in the vendor name, any memo with notes, and then I can put in the subcategory, which will update the category and the expense type. And then I also put in the dollar value. I put them in as positive values, and then it feeds through and the calculations correctly do their thing. So I have a place for expenses. I have a place to enter any income. And then I have a place for entering transfers. This is my 2026 workbook, so it's not populated because I do use actual names and all of that in my normal workbook, but I did create this a little in advance so I could show you guys. I also have a place where I can see my account balances and make sure that everything has been entered and is populating correctly. These feed off of the income and expense and transfer tabs. And then I would put in the starting balance at the beginning of the year and it would automatically feed everything through. I have a place for my data, so I can put in my fiscal year. I can put in my different account names, my different subcategories, and then the categories that they go up under, and then what type of expense it is, fixed, sinking funds, variable, so on and so forth. And then I have my monthly worksheets, which these are not correct. Well, some of them are, but I put in my income at the top here. And this is the budgeting section in this area. And then over here, auto populates based off of what I enter in the expenses and the income fee tabs. And then it automatically pulls through. So I have my fixed expenses and their due dates and what they are. And then I go through and I do the monthly budget. So rent is $1,025. Electric, I think I've been budgeting $100. Internet is $115. Cell phone is, I think, $92, right around there. Car insurance is $87. And then I can go through and look at, so I'm going to use the paycheck at the end of December as my first paycheck for January. And then my second paycheck for January is on the 14th. So rent is $512.50 for each of those. Electric is due on the 21st, so I can do it all under the second paycheck. Same with internet. Same with, cell phone needs to be before that. And then my car insurance could go on the second paycheck. And then $35 for fitness. And then I believe this one's $341.64 and $132. So that is how I go through and I do my paycheck, my budgets. I enter in the monthly amount in this section, and then I break it out by paycheck here. And then this will tell me if I have any difference between what I budgeted for the month and what I have for the paychecks. And then I have any rollover from the previous month entered here. I have my max balance so I can see if I've reached it or not. And then this total balance is is this amount, the previous month rollover, plus anything that I enter in here. All my expenses auto-populate through. And then this is just the total amount of expenses for the month. This is my monthly budgeted amount minus my actual amount spent. And this is the amount that's remaining for the month. And then I would create a new tab for February. And then I would formulate, going after I do January, I formulate this amount. So it just auto pulls from the previous month the amounts in this column. And then I can go through, and do a comparison against Notion and write the Notion budgeted amounts in here. And then it'll tell me if there's a difference between what I have in Notion and what I have on the workbook. And I can fix that if I need to. So I have that for all of my different budget amounts. And it just goes right on down. At the bottom of each of these, it auto tells me how much I have left over for that paycheck. And I can go through and budget for that paycheck until I'm down to zero. And then it tells me how much I've spent each week and for the month and all of that. So this is, and then I enter my paycheck budget amounts into Notion, and I use the numbers that I enter here. So my system is I enter all transactions into Notion. I pull all my expenses and income amounts and transfers and enter them into the workbook. And then I come in here and I look at how much I'm budgeting for that paycheck, and then I enter that into the paycheck budget entries for Notion, and then I can compare Notion by entering the amounts here to make sure that it ties out. So it takes a little bit, but I found that this works really well for me when I'm actually doing it. And I think there's a few things I want to do in here so that I can easily look at how much I've spent in certain categories throughout the year, which I could look at in Notion, I guess. But this way I'll have a record and I can go back and look at previous years as well and compare everything. But this is my Excel workbook. So thank you for watching today. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I would love to hear what system do you use? Do you just use a paper planner? Or a budgeting system, or do you use Notion or Excel or Google Sheets or another system such as Quicken or something like that? I know there's a lot of different programs out there, so I'd love to hear what you use, what has worked for you, and I'll see you next time. Toodles.